Hello folks, hello. How are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This video is for you to access my model analysis of sentence number 4 here. This is page 105 in our handbook, so that you can have some, key ideas in terms of what you should have in mind when producing the analytical justification of your work and the analysis of the original. Okay, always thinking in terms of the contrast that there emerges between the two languages. So this is the original Empiezo, leer, ahora, which could be translated into English as "Shall I start reading now?" So key ideas in terms of Spanish is that this is a perífrasis aspectual incoativa, which is made up of empezará plus infinitivo. So everything should go between inverted commas, for it is written in Spanish. So the incoative meaning at stake points to a change of state, right? This is what the notion of incoativa or incoative meaning refers to. Empezar is an auxiliary verb in Spanish. It is the verb in the perífrasis that is tensed. It shows presente del modo indicativo, tense and mood. Leer is the lexical verb denoting lexical aspect. Leer as a dictionary entry as such, right, points to an activity. However, the structure in which it is used, that is to say, a perífrasis aspectual incoativa, impacts on the lexical aspect and turns it into a dynamic, punctual, and telic situation, that is to say, a logro. So this is evidence of the fact that aspecto léxico is to be compositionally understood. Leer alone in itself points to an activity, but the way in which it is used here in this perífrasis, this structure impacts on the lexical aspect that leer shows in this case, and it becomes a logro. So the situation of starting to read is connected to the immediate future. This is the temporal reference, right? It has, and in particular there is a suggestion represented by means of this specific form, perífrasis aspectual incoativa, and considering the fact that it is used as an interrogative sentence. So the suggestion is realized not only by means of the perífrasis as such, but also because of it being an interrogative sentence. In English, in contrast, we have a modal verb phrase. We have a modal verb shall plus a lexical verb start. We should remember that modal verbs are defective verbs in English. That means they are always finite. And the lexical verb denoting lexical aspect is start, right? Which is an achievement. There is information that is crucial in this analysis pertaining to shall in Grimam-Quirk's chapter, section 4.28, point in particular B. They say, in questions containing shall I, shall we, shall consults the wishes of the addressee and thus moves from a volitional towards an obligational meaning. Therefore, what we, in terms of modality or modal meaning, denoted, it is that of intrinsic modality or root modality. Now, different from Spanish, reading is not part of the VP. It is an ing form, a gerund that is the direct object of the VP. Shall I start? I shall start would be in the declarative form. In this interrogative form, we have first the auxiliary form, the auxiliary verb, then the subject, and then the lexical verb. But in any case, reading is not part of the verb phrase. In contrast, it is the direct object. So it is a different constituent altogether from the verb phrase. This is very different from Spanish, okay? Because in Spanish we have no direct object, but rather we have a verbal periphrasis that is made up of empezará plus leer, right? So leer in Spanish belongs to the VP. Reading in English does not, okay? Now, this is it, right? Now start, the situation of starting is like empezar in Spanish, dynamic, punctual, and telic. So this is also an achievement, right? Logro in Spanish, an achievement in English. The situation of reading is connected to the immediate future. This is a temporal reference. In particular, a suggestion is represented. So there's non-correspondence, for we have a VP made up of a modal auxiliary verb plus a lexical verb in its infinitive form, shall and start in English. And although we also speak of a periphrastic VP made up of an auxiliary verb in Spanish and an infinitive form in terms of its lexical verb, it is not exactly a modal verb, auxiliary verb that is in use in Spanish. All right, so there's non-correspondence in terms of, you know, using a modal verb in English or showing a modal verb, the English counterpart, and not so the Spanish counterpart. Also non-correspondence in terms of, you know, empezar a leer, forming a unit, in contrast to shall start, different from reading in terms of constitutive elements in the sentence in English. Although there are points of convergence too, right? In that, although not a modal verb in Spanish, we can also speak of a VP that is made up of an auxiliary verb and a lexical verb in its infinitive form, like in English. And we can also speak of the same lexical aspect at stake and the same situation being represented, right, in the two, or by means of the two verb phrases. The situation of a suggestion, right? But I would say that the non-correspondence is, I think, more obvious than the points of convergence. You can always admit to the existence of, you know, both non-correspondence and correspondence or convergence, so long as you know, back up your analysis. Now it is your turn to write a paragraph, you know, employing these ideas in a coherent and cohesive way. And you can always tell us when you have these paragraphs ready, and we can discuss what you have produced in an upcoming live session. Thank you very much, folks.